Baruch here with genConnect, joined today by Ms. Melody Barnes. Melody, what's it like to finally be out of public service? I don't mean to say finally in a good way necessarily,
Right.
but you spent so many years working for President Obama on his campaign in the White House, working for Senator Kennedy. What's it like?
It's almost like taking an inside cat and throwing them to the outside world, because you're right, I spent so many years of my career, the vast majority of my career, working in Congress or working in the White House, and it was such an honor, such a privilege to serve, and I loved it, and I learned a lot. But I finally realized, based on all the things I've learned, because I've spent so much time both in Congress and working in the White House, I understand how government works, and it would be fun and interesting and I think fulfilling to take those skills and move them to the outside world, to work with the private sector, continue to work with nonprofits, using that knowledge base to continue to do things that I think are important. So that's been a lot of fun. It's been interesting and a learning experience for me, which is what I always want.
And I'm sure, speaking of learning experiences, I'm sure you learned quite a bit working in the White House. Can you highlight one special moment that you had, I'm sure there were many, with the president?
You're right. One is very, very, very difficult. I mean, in some ways, just sitting there in the Oval Office, and 1 minute you're sitting there and the president is looking at you and you're providing advice, and then all of a sudden you have this out-of-body experience and you think, I'm sitting here in the Oval Office advising the President of the United States. And then you think, I better pay attention to what he's saying because he's going to ask me a question and I need to know the answer. But I think two things that are connected. Working on the campaign was a wonderful experience because part of my time was just spent traveling all over the United States and talking to people, telling them what in 2008 this candidate for president, Senator Barack Obama, would do if he was elected. And I met so many wonderful people in Montana and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, all over the country. And I took those stories with me. I can tell you almost verbatim some of the things those people said to me. And a lot of them talked to me about healthcare. And to be able then to fast forward to that night in March, and it was this wonderful, warm, unusually warm, early spring night, and Congress had finally passed the Affordable Care Act, and he invited us to the Truman balcony, which is off of the residence. And we were standing out there, all, my colleagues and I, and talking about the fact that this had finally been accomplished. And after all of my years working for Senator Kennedy, who desperately wanted to get that done, talking to people on the campaign trail and finally having it happen, I will never, ever, ever forget that night. It was very special.
Your career really came full circle at that point.
Yeah, a lot of things really came together.
What was the number one lesson you learned while you were sitting in the Oval Office advising the president?
That it was important to bring my experience to the table. There was a reason why he selected all of us, asked each of us who were assistants to the president to serve. And that was because we each had a unique background and perspective, and we had expertise in a whole set of policy areas. Bringing that unique perspective to the table was important because I was bringing voices and experiences and what I'd heard and what I'd learned from the beginning, growing up in Richmond, Virginia, in the 60s and 70s, what I learned working for Senator Kennedy, what I'd learned at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, to the table when he was asking tough questions. And I had to give unvarnished opinions and advice to him so that he could take all of that and make the best decisions possible. So you have to bring your experience to the table. There's a reason why your unique voice is important.
Thank you for bringing your experience to our table.
Great, thank you.
And for more with Melody Barnes, be sure to check out genConnect.